All right, good morning, everybody, and welcome to Control+M Presents the Pick and Fab module with our Veronica Meyer. This is our weekly contribution to the Plex community, help build up knowledge and get you to get the most out of your Plex implementation. This week, welcome our Veronica Meyer. She's a Plex accredited developer. I've known Veronica as a Plex client for years, and she joined us as a consultant last year. She's a huge supporter of the Plex community. She's going to tell you all about the Plex Picking and Fabrication module. So with that, I'm going to mute myself and take it away, Veronica.
Well, thank you, Patty, for that lovely introduction. Yep. So in case anybody wants to know what a PAD is, it's a Plex accredited developer. It means I'm allowed to write code against the live database. So our agenda for the day, I'm going to be telling you why Plex Picking and Fabrication can be helpful in your facilities. I'm going to say how to set it up. I'm going to demo what it looks like. And this is a great module that can really make your manufacturing easier, and I'm excited to be presenting it to you. So picking and fabrication is the process in which individually separate but related items are picked, packaged, and supplied together as one part number. It's also known as kitting, and it's its own module in Plex. It's available both classic and UX. And a meal prep service like HelloFresh is a great example of what a kit is. I'm going to tell them that I would like to make a stir fry for dinner, and they're going to send me all of my ingredients. They're going to pick my onions and a zucchini and some carrots and some ginger and some garlic, and they're going to package that up as one process, and I'll receive that and make my meal. So here are some of the things that we've seen customers doing, and they're really doing a pick and fab operation. So these are complex transactions, generally a first operation, or it could be the entire operation.
There you go.
Do you have workstations set up to pack multiple finished items together that is then ready to ship to a customer? Do you gather multiple components to be used to assemble something like an engine, or you're building a back deck and you go to Home Depot and you buy the deck, and they're actually doing the assembly of those 100 components or sub-assemblies for you. All of these processes have you log into a work center, load a job, allocate operators, load inventory, produce a product, and otherwise perform functions to get you to that end goal of selling to the customer. So can picking and fabrication work in your facility? Well, if you don't require knowing who or how many operators are working on a job, if you don't require the exact amount of time logged into a work center or job operation, and you do use buildings, picking and fabrication could work in your facilities. So how does it work in Plex? On your process routings, you need to make sure there's a work center. Like, wait, didn't you just say I don't have to run this in my control panel? So why do I need to add a work center? Well, a part with no work center won't show up in PRP. So if this is your only operation on your process routing, you'll never see it in PRP to be able to make it. If it's your first operation or before the next scheduled operation and you don't set it up, then you won't have that lead time before that second operation kicks off. A part with no work center won't show in PRP. Yep. A standard cost is going to want a work center and a crew for the cost algorithms. The job start date was going to use this information, and it's going to drive the component materials in at the correct time. So if you don't have a work center, you won't be able to record labor time manually in the pick and fabrication module, which I'll just show you in a bit. You still have to create your bill of materials. You still have to create your jobs. And this is where it deviates. Instead of going to the control panel and loading the job, you're going to go into the pick and fabrication screens, or in UX, it's going to be called job picking and packing. And you're not going to need to split your containers. Plex is going to do all that for you. And just like in the control panel, the source components are depleted into the WIP or finished good part when the pick and fab operation is completed. Setup is easy. You enable the setting to display the fabrication flag on the operation. you enable the operation that you want to be fabrication. And so we created a specific operation called fabrication, and you'll notice that it has the fabrication checkbox selected. If you're already using buildings, you would select a building when the job is created. Otherwise, buildings will need to be enabled because a building is mandatory on the job. Now, there's multiple other settings available to tailor how pick and fabrication will work for you, such as the default pick and fab quantities setting. That's going to preload the quantities that are required for that job into the pick and fabrication screen. Do you have this module enabled? You'll need to enter a case if you don't, and you're going to be looking for the job, picking and packing in UX, and it's called Picking and Fabrication in Classic. So let's see how this is actually going to work in your PCNs. So I'm showing you UX. We'll run it both in UX and in Classic. So this is my process routing for my meal kit. Notice it's a 2-operation routing. The first operation is fabrication. I'm going to go and really quick look at my operations for fabrication, just to prove to you that I do have that fabrication checkbox checked. There she is. So there's my fabrication. There's my work center. It's going to be run on the assembly so that I can pull all of the times and be able to record my labor. It's going to be made up of 2 sub-assemblies. One is breakfast and one is sandwich. So my meal kit's only going to feed you breakfast and lunch. If you want dinner, you're going to be on your own. It's got 2 supply items attached to it. So pepper and salt are going to be consumed when I run this through fabrication, but you're not going to have to load those 2 components in. So let's take a look at what my inventory currently looks like. I've made a certain favorite group. I've put all the things that I need to in that group for UX. It's kind of one of those really nice features in UX. And in my location, my ice box, I've got some breakfast sandwiches in production. I've got some already made. I've got some sandwiches already made. So I'm going to expect that anything in breakfast that hasn't been cooked yet is not going to be show up as being available in my pick and fab screens. Let's go to jobs. And in my job manager, I don't have any current jobs for meal kits, so I'm going to go ahead and add one. The same way I would do for it for anything else. I can do it for here, or I can do it through pick and pack or PRP. So I'm going to make a job for 5 pieces. I'm going to select my building, FOCO. If I have my building in my jobs in one building and my inventory in another, it's not going to show available inventory when I go to the pick and pack screens. I'm going to go ahead and say this is due tomorrow. And I'm going to say okay. Now I have a job sitting there at a new status. Now, this job does not have to be scheduled for pick and pack. It's not a requirement. The problem with that is if it's the first operation in a multiple routing, you're not going to see the other routings scheduled. So you're going to have to schedule them for those to be able to see, but it's not a requirement for the pick and fab module. I'm going to go and show you how this looks in pick and pack. Job picking and packing, guys. Welcome to UX. So I would go ahead and enter my job number, which there's my job. I highlight it. I click Fab. It's going to take a second to come back to me. And there's my pick and fab screen. So there is a sort by location or component. I have all of my items in the same location and it looks kind of messy. I usually just flip it over to component and hit search, and then it groups the components that I need and then the containers that I need in the series that I want them. So I have the pre-filled quantities turned on. So it's telling me that I have one item available in that serial number. So I'm going to consume that as my FIFO. And I'm going to pull the rest of the quantity that I require from my second container. If I decide to scan my containers in, and I'm going to just bake this through here, it's going to scan the entire container quantity, and I'm going to be overpicked because it preloaded for me. So in that case, I would turn off that preload setting. If I go ahead and hit create at this point, and I say, yes, I'm an operator and I verified all of my quantities, it's going to say I've picked too many components, which is a very nice way to say, hey, if I'm loading a lot of components and I have to scroll down my screen to see what is loaded and what is not, that will very easily tell me that I have this adjusted. If I say, okay, I only want 3 of those, okay, B5. It says too many picked. I can hit create again. Yes, I'm still verified. And I still have too many components. So it really keeps you from creating and using too many parts for the screen that you're in. So I've consumed 5 for this, for the quantity required. I got 5 loaded for my next container. I'm going ahead and hit create. It tells me I have 2. Oh, no, it doesn't. It's going to go ahead and create for me. So we have it turned on so that you create a unique tracking number for every container that I'm creating. In this case, I'm just going to reuse the container that I have created. I'm going to change my location so that I don't have to use a move transaction after I've created my container. I'm going to go ahead and say this took me an hour and a half to make, and I'm going to hit apply. So what did that do to my inventory? It created it. There's my 5 pieces of my meal kit. You notice that my container that I didn't use is still there, but it took the 5 out of the missing or the other container. And then this container has the pieces consumed from it also. And it took the 1 out of the other container. So it's very easy to do. And we'll go ahead and run this through in Classic the same way. Again, there's my process routings. There's the things I'm going to be making it out of. I'm going to go to Job Manager and say, hey, do I have any? No, we don't want to do that. Thank you. I always like that reminders like, hey, don't run this wide open. You won't like. So there's the job I already made. See, it's already moved to the next operation. If I go in and look at the operations on the job, shows me completed, shows my next status is new because I didn't run it under schedule and I would want to. So I'm going to add a new job. I'm going to run this one for 3 pieces. I'm going to have it due on Friday, and it's going to be running out of the FOCO location. There's my status on that one. And again, if I look at the job operations on this one, they're both sitting at new, and I'm going to be able to run this in Pick and Fabrication without scheduling that job. So I'm going to go over to the Pick and Fab screens. I'm going to type in my new job number. Just like in UX, I click on Fab, and just like in UX, it is preloading those quantities for me. At this point, I'm not going to change the quantities. I'm just going to say, sure, that's exactly what I've made this out of. Yes, I am an operator and I always verify my quantities, and I've printed my labels and attached them correctly. I'm going to add same question on the tracking number. I'm going to add this in. I'm going to change my location. And this one, I was very quick. It only took me a half an hour to make, and I am done. So that's how you do pick and fab. It's very, very simple, and it works very well. So I'm going to flip back to our PowerPoint presentation and have Patty go over costing. Off to you, Patty.
Thanks, Veronica. Good job showing that module. And the costing side of this is pretty simple to understand. If you're on standard costing, then really nothing changes at all. And this is one of the reasons that Veronica told you to make sure that you have a work center, pieces per hour, and a crew on your part so that you can consider those costs. They should be picked up in your part cost structure, in your cost algorithm. I have some clients that don't want to put that in there with the work center rate and crew, and I advise them two things. Number one, unless the person doing the picking is actually included in your SG&A expenses, you're probably going to want to direct cost that as part of your cost algorithm. The second thing is, when the job system actually goes out and schedules the job, if you have this either as your only operation on a part or first operation on a part, remember, generally your MRP drives in materials at the start of the operation date. So if you don't tell Plex how long this is going to take to pick, the system's going to assume you can do it in literally no time. So make sure that you've got good information in there. Actual costing is a little bit different. Typically in actual costing, you have somebody log into a work center, and then the actual costing system takes the actual elapsed time in that activity, multiplied by a labor rate from that person, position or work center, creates the cost record, and it throws a related overhead cost record. Well, in this case, Veronica just puts in hours after the pick and fab process. And in our system, that only threw a labor record. It did not also throw an overhead record where typically we would see that. It acts more like a timesheet record. I didn't spend a lot of time seeing if we could make the pick and fab system throw an overhead cost record as well, because there are so few folks that use actual cost. But if you're using that and you want me to dig into making that happen, just go ahead and flip me an email. So Veronica, if you wouldn't mind switching to your next session, your next slide. We're going to open up the floor for questions. Remember, we do have everybody muted. If you can't mute, hit me up in the chat. I've got that. If you can't unmute, hit me up in the chat and I'll make sure you have access. So any questions?
This is Chris. Did you say this is going to be out on YouTube?
Yep, this and all of our sessions. Yep, this and all of our sessions are out on YouTube all the time, Chris, and I appreciate you asking about that. Does it have to be, so question from Vicky, does it have to be FIFO when consuming raw materials? No, not at all. Veronica showed that you could scan a container directly, and if you do scan a container, the system will take either the entire amount required, or if your container has fewer pieces than the amount required, it will use the whole container. So we can select which container to use. Great question, Vicky.
Hey, Veronica, this is Mark.
Hey.
Hey, so can you set it up so that you can run the job multiple times? So you can pick a kit of your breakfast sandwich and your lunch sandwich and then do it again the next day, the next day, the next day, instead of saying a quantity of 5 and pick all 5 at once?
It will not allow you. So if I had a quantity of 100 kits and I only wanted to produce 5 a day, it won't let you do a partial against the job. So we'd have to have multiple jobs out there.
Okay.
You have to complete the entire job in order to get to that labor recording screen.
Okay, thanks.
And just an FYI to the rest of the team, if you wanted to, you could create a large job and split it up too, if you've got job splitting enabled in your system. Any other questions?
This is Chris again. Would this work with Kanban in any way?
I don't know how it could because it's predicated on jobs.
On jobs, okay.
Yeah. Good question though, Chris. I mean, we could give it a try if you want and get back to you. Well, Veronica, if you don't mind, why don't you pop up to the next slide? If anyone has any questions, you're still welcome to jump out to us. But thank you very much, Veronica, for showing us all about the Picking and Fab module in Plex. It's a pretty cool module, and we'd like to see folks start picking it up. We're really enjoying providing these sessions for you. Our next session is going to be on methods of traceability in Plex. Most of you know Plex has multiple ways to do plate traceability, and it is one of the Plex basic building blocks. Both Classic and UX have different methods, and our Ken Keller is going to go through them. Things like heats, lot tracking, container and part serialization, and he's going to talk about connecting up heats and grades. So thanks everybody for attending. Remember our YouTube channel. Please take a minute or two to like our videos. Those thumbs up mean a lot to us. So even if you watched it live, we appreciate the props on the videos. It helps keep us motivated to continue providing these free training sessions for the community. So have a great week, everybody. Stay safe and healthy.
Thank you, Patty. Great session.
Oh,
Thank you, that's very good.
Thanks,
Hi,
Chris.
Maria.
Thank you, Veronica.
Thank you.
Well, Daniel Gonzalez had a question, Patty,
Oh, you
that
did,
popped up
Danielle?
in the
Jump
chat.
it.
Yes, I did.
Oh,
Huh.
sorry. Let's take a peek at it.
Sorry about that, Daniel. It says, does it allow variable bill of materials? It is not something we tested with, but again, we could go back and check that for you if you'd like us to.
I'd be astounded if it did, but it'd be worth a try. Veronica, we get a variable BOM part. I think it's actually called VBOM in the CMS PCN.
Mm-hmm.
If you want, Jill can get you the email addresses of everybody who attended, and we'll take a peek at those two questions, Kanban and VBOMs, and see if it works. We'll just throw an email out to the whole team.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah.